Hi, I'm Jeff McCausland, founder and CEO of Diamond 6 Leadership and Strategy. What I want to talk to you about today is how I think leaders have to consider inspiring confidence in their organization, particularly at difficult or changing moments. Frequently in our discussions for Diamond 6, we talk about a definition of leadership that we like. It's provided by Dwight Eisenhower, and that is leaders have to decide what has to be done and then get others to want to do it. Get them to buy into the vision the leadership has in fact described for the organization. Now, this can be very, very difficult, particularly because leaders have to deal with change within the organization or change within the environment. We know full well most people within an organization are oftentimes resistant to change. Secondly, leaders are the ones that set a vision for the organization, particularly when the organization hits bumps in the road, problems, difficulties, setbacks. How do we respond in those particular difficult moments? Well, leaders inspire their team, and one of the things that no one as a leader should ever forget is they need to be the one person in the organization that remains optimistic in the face of uncertainty. Let me tell you a story that perhaps illustrates that very, very well. On the 5th of June, 1944, General Dwight Eisenhower met with a bunch of young paratroopers from the 101st Airborne Division. You may have seen this iconic photograph of Eisenhower talking with the group, thrusting his hands out, knowing full well that these young men were going to board aircraft, fly over the airspace over Nazi-controlled France, and parachute into enemy country. Sadly, we know in that photograph, a number of the young men that were there were either killed or wounded within 24 hours of the photograph being taken. The young lieutenant in the center is a guy by the name of Wally Strobel. It happened to be Wally's birthday. I had the opportunity to meet Wally Strobel about 10 years ago at an event. He certainly underscored the point that Eisenhower was trying to make, and that is this operation is going to be successful. There's no doubt about it. He wasn't talking to Strobel about how to jump out of an airplane, how to conduct platoon tactics, how to fire his weapon, or any of those things that Strobel had worked on with his men so hard up until that particular moment. He was by his presence telling these guys this was going to work. In fact, Eisenhower had repeated that over and over in the preparation for that mammoth D-Day invasion. When he spoke with his staff as early as March of 1944, he would say, "This operation is planned as a success. There can be no thought of failure, for I assure you there is no possibility of failure happening." Now, in reality, privately, Eisenhower agonized over this and actually wrote a note which he put into his pocket if in fact the invasion had failed, and in that note he was going to use that for a press conference or for a press release. He accepted full responsibility, saying that the soldiers, sailor, and airmen had participated, had done all they could, and the failure was his responsibility alone. So Eisenhower kept his fears private, while outwardly with Strobel and his staff sounding a note of optimism and confidence. So when you're leading your team at a difficult moment, when you're trying to convince them to accept change that you're fully convinced the organization has to embrace, you might reflect back on the thoughts of Dwight Eisenhower at a difficult moment in his leadership and a conversation with a young lieutenant by the name of Wally Strobel. Finally, you might even think about a great quote from an author on leadership that I like, John Gardner. And John once said, "The first and last task of a leader is to keep hope alive in the organization."